My name is Ben Burgis. I am the author of Canceling Comedians While the World Burns, a critique of the contemporary left, which is coming out on May Day from Zero Books. And I'm going to get back to the book in a few minutes, but what I want to talk about right now is something that's just kind of come back up because there's this new documentary series at HBO, Allen versus Farrow, which has reopened the scandals related to Dylan Farrow's sexual assault allegations against filmmaker Woody Allen. And more importantly, at least, or, not more importantly for them, of course, but more importantly for my purposes here, the tangle of related culture war issues about whether it's even okay to separate the art from the artist. Now, the series squarely takes the side of Dylan and her mother, Mia Farrow, in portraying Allen as an abuser, although this is very much in dispute. Here's what we do know. Allen has been together with his wife, Soon-Yi, for about 30 years. Soon-Yi, in turn, was the adopted daughter of Allen's previous girlfriend, Mia Farrow. Despite having dated, for many years, Allen and Farrow never lived in the same house, and by all accounts, Allen and Soon-Yi rarely even spoke to each other until Soon-Yi was an adult, and Farrow encouraged them to spend more time together. Now, when Farrow discovered that Woody and Soon-Yi were seeing each other, she was understandably outraged. Who wouldn't be? Cheating on your girlfriend with her adult adopted daughter is behavior that can most charitably be described as extremely sleazy, and that much definitely happened. What else happened is deeply disputed. According to their daughter Dylan, Woody Allen molested her exactly once when visiting the house during a bitter custody battle. Those who believe the allegation point out that Dylan has stood by her story for decades and she has little to gain from lying. Those who don't believe it, like Dylan's brother Moses Farrow, point out that extensive investigations at the time by the Child Sexual Abuse Clinic at the Yale New Haven Hospital and by the New York Child Welfare Agency both cleared Allen of the charges. Granted, the judge in the custody case was more ambivalent, saying that he was less confident that the investigators had been that it didn't happen, but also that there was insufficient evidence that it did. Moses Farrow has in turn claimed that Mia had a pattern of abusive behavior, bullying and hitting her biological and adopted children, and he claims that he and his sister were coached about what to say about Allen and berated when they went off script. His suggestion seems to be that Dylan might sincerely believe the allegation, but that this should be put in the same category as alleged victims of satanic ritual abuse who sincerely believe that they were abused. So if you want to get Dylan and Mia's side of the story, watch the HBO series. If you want to get Moses and Woody's side, read Moses's 5,000-word blog post about it from 2018 entitled A Son Speaks Out. Ronan Farrow, in turn, responded to Moses, disputing the details that Moses recalled, and so on. This is a rabbit hole that, if you're so inclined, you could spend a long time going down. So, who's telling the truth here? I have no idea. We have multiple adult children, both making competing allegations of abuse against different parents. I'm not immune from finding sad and horrifying stories like this one perversely fascinated, but I'm fairly skeptical of the idea that anyone outside of these people's immediate families and social circles can speak with any significant degree of certainty about whatever awful thing or perhaps awful things really happened in these families. What I am interested in is the issue of why we care in the first place and what so many people seem to think is at stake in deciding who to believe. In other words, the issue of separating the art from the artist. An awful lot of people seem to hold the view that if we believe that Woody Allen is an abuser, we have some sort of moral obligation to never watch his movies or at least never to spend money on them. I've lost count of the number of times I've heard people I know say of Allen or some other allegedly problematic artist, I'm never going to give another dollar to them. Now, to the extent that people who say things like this are just expressing their personal sensibilities, I have no quarrel with that. If you can't watch Annie Hall without thinking about the sexual abuse allegations and it ruins your experience for you, by all means, don't watch Annie Hall. life is short, and that's a very good movie, but there are other good movies in the world, and you can pick another one to watch on any given Friday night. I can't imagine anything stranger than telling people that they should watch or enjoy something that makes them uncomfortable. So I'm not talking about that. Instead, what interests me is the normative claim that often seems to be at work in these discussions, that people shouldn't watch Alan's movies, or at least that they shouldn't spend money on them, and that these decisions have something to do with Twitter's favorite words, accountability and consequences. And I find that very confusing, quite independently of what we decide is or isn't true about what might or might not have happened in the Allen and Farrow families 30 years ago. So take another case. Take Marilyn Manson, who, unlike Allen, has been accused of abusive behavior multiple times by multiple people. If you're technologically retro enough to still own CDs, do you have some sort of moral obligation to toss out your copy of Antichrist Superstar, or never listen to it again? Or if you lose it, do you at least have a moral obligation to not give him more money by buying a replacement? It seems to me that the idea that there's some sort of moral imperative to do either of these things represents a strange and moralistic sort of symbolic pseudopolitics that's about individual morality rather than about trying to change the world. People often get away with sexual abuse, especially when they exercise economic or other forms of power that make it easy for them to bribe or intimidate their victims into silence. That's horrifying, and we should definitely be trying to achieve a society with the fewest possible such asymmetries of power. But what good exactly is it supposed to do for this cause to not listen to music or watch movies created by bad people, or even not to pay for them? To be clear, I don't see celebrities whose work won't be widely consumed because, or won't be as widely consumed because of this sort of thing, as victims or anything in the neighborhood of that. I'm sure that financially, Marilyn Manson, Woody Allen, whoever, I'm sure they're all going to be fine. What interests me is not how any of this affects them. Instead, what interests me is what it says about us and the way that we understand politics if we think that depriving people of income or recognition or whatever is some sort of important form of punishment for alleged transgressions. And oftentimes when people who are leftists, or at least vaguely progressive, have this view that it is this important and righteous form of punishment, there's a strange tension within their overall views about how to think about punishment. After all, the left has rightly opposed mass incarceration and the trend towards treating prisoners ever more harshly. We want to ban the box so that even rapists and murderers won't be denied employment once they get out of prison. Of course, you could say that that's only about redemption after people have already paid back their debt to society. That's a view you could have. But presumably, we also want prisoners who have not served their time, who are currently in prison, to be able to do things like take classes and write books and be given supplies so they can create art from behind bars. This is exactly the kind of thing that punitive reactionaries who are always emphasizing that prison is supposed to be punishment are against, and that we rightly want to allow. So to make this a little bit more concrete, let's think about a third example. George W. Bush committed war crimes on a scale that dwarfs comprehension. He spilled oceans of blood in Afghanistan and Iraq. If we had our way, right, and we, the anti-war left, presumably Bush would not be a free man. He would be extradited to The Hague, and he would be spending probably the remainder of his life, certainly decades, sitting in a cell there. So that said, given our general views about prisons, we presumably want him to be able to engage in his current second career as a painter from behind bars. I know I wouldn't want anyone to prevent him from either painting or selling his shitty paintings while he serves his time. So what explains this apparent disconnect, or if it's not quite a logical contradiction, at least a tension within the views of people who sound very punitive when they're talking about celebrities who are accused of doing terrible things and consuming their art, and are very much not that way. When they're talking even about rapists and murderers, or I think most people on the left would agree with everything that I just said about George W. Bush. Well, I think that part of the problem here, and this is what brings us back to the book, is that creating a society where no one has the power that Harvey Weinstein or even Marilyn Manson had to get away with assault for decades is incredibly difficult. And forget locking up George W. Bush. Half of the ghouls in his administration were rehabilitated in the liberal group mind during the Trump years. But when real change seems to be out of reach, a pseudo-politics of tiny symbolic gestures often feels like it's better than nothing. We micro-police our own behavior and those of others. Oh, I can't believe you give money to, because that feels like something we can control. Now, there's a lot more to say about this kind of moralistic approach to left politics. I try to say a lot of it in the book, and I'm going to be getting more into it in subsequent videos. But for now, let me just say this. I want to build a left that's free of moralistic nonsense precisely because I want us to get back to the task of actually trying to change the world.
Thanks for watching this Zero Books video. If you enjoyed it, subscribe to this channel and click on the notifications bell so that you'll be alerted whenever we release a new video. You should also consider supporting us on Patreon. Our patrons get access to our Inside Zero Books podcast every week and can get access to the Zero Books Book Club and help us to continue making online content from the left.